The last couple of wins for the Silver and Black does not affect the postseason for them. There's none of that. It does affect their draft order. It also affects some young guys proving that they belong on the team. That plus a whole lot more on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for December 31st, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching us wherever you find your favorite podcast or you're checking us out by way of YouTube, we appreciate that. Either way, it goes a long way when you check in with the show each and every day. So many thanks to you. But if you are checking us out on YouTube, got to give big ups to my guy, Ari, who does a fantastic job behind the scenes each and every day, making sure we're looking good and sounding good by way of the YouTube page. So big shout out to my man, Ari. If you want to check him out on Twitter, you can. At Ari Produces. You can hit me up, as many of you do, at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, good feedback, bad feedback, whatever the case may be, we take it all. 707-654-4693. And trust and believe, there's a lot of everything coming up in segment number 3 of today's show. As we close out, we'll get as much in as possible. Closing out the 2024 year, not the season, but the year. This is the last show of the year. Coming up tomorrow, it will actually be 2025. That year flew by. And I know that's a saying that old folks say, but that just means I'm getting a little bit older, and it's a blessing to get older. I say it all the time. So yeah, happy New Year's Eve to you, and obviously celebrate safely, and whatever you do this evening, if you do go out and celebrate or whatever the case may be safe out there. We want to make sure that you're tuning back in 2025. But we got your feedback in segment number 3 of today's show. Coming up in segment number 2, we'll talk all things draft and really just kind of let you know where the Raiders stand as of right now. After 17 weeks are in the book, obviously one more week. What's the lowest that they can, drop to? Who's in place to get the number 1 overall pick? And really just kind of take a look at the top 10. We'll talk about all things NFL draft in segment number 2 of the Locked On Raiders podcast. And here in segment number 1, just news and notes from what AP had to say at his press conference by way of Zoom, and a couple other little nuggets about different Raider players. We'll do that here in segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Antonio Pierce did meet with the media, and it was great. I did a 4-hour show on ESPN on Monday morning, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific time, and then right at 11 a.m., Antonio Pierce had his media availability, but instead of being at the facility like it normally is, it was by way of Zoom. So boom, jump off one show, jump onto the Zoom. So it was all good. But, I've been talking about in evaluation season, a lot of the young players, and I know a lot of people are not happy when seeing the Raiders win games. A lot of folks are calling them meaningless games. I don't say they're meaningless because I know there's a lot of guys that are fighting for jobs, whether it's with the Raiders or another team. But a lot of these young dudes are really starting to step up and show out in a major way. I've talked about Isaiah Palomar in a major way the last few weeks. I think he continues to show up and show out. And so he was the guy I asked Antonio Pierce about on Monday by way of Zoom. Check it out. When you see what Isaiah Palomar has been doing on the back end, he talks about film study, and he understands what he's reading and seeing now on film. He's making plays. He's knocking the ball out consistently. How much have you seen him grow since he's been put into the starting role?
Huge. I mean, I've known Isaiah since high school, watched him in college, tried to get him in the portal to ASU when I was there. I'm very familiar with him. I've seen tremendous growth just as a player. I mean, from a physicality standpoint, which I think was questioned when he was coming out, I think he's really bought into that. I mean, he's changed his body over the last, 24 months since he's been there, since his rookie season. And like I've always said, he's always made the most of his opportunities. If it's from special teams, and again, he was there on special teams yesterday, making tackles down the field and going out there on defense. I mean, he's really, really, man, done an outstanding job of filling in, and we have not blinked. We haven't stopped. His playmaking ability now with the ball in the air coming out the post, the physicality is showing up now 2 games in a row. And it's been consistent. His tackling has improved. I can't really speak highly enough of him. I think he's done an excellent job to put himself in position to have a good future.
I think Isaiah's done a really good job. I really do. And I don't know what the defense is going to look like next season. I don't know who's going to be in play. Trayvon Merrick is a free agent. Marcus Epps is a free agent. They still have Chris Smith on the roster as well. So there's flexibility. There's different things that they can do. But I definitely believe Isaiah Palomar should be a part of the mix, regardless of what is done. I've seen him since he's stepped in for Marcus Epps after he tore his ACL early in the season and taken over that deep safety role. And he's done really well, and he's improved. right? And that's the thing. You want to see improvement. I think that Isaiah has absolutely done that. Trayvon Merrick, I got to give him a lot of props as well. He went from being that deep center fielder to all of a sudden playing up, in the box, by the line of scrimmage, being the communicator. That's who Marcus Epps was. He was the big-time communicator, and that's a new role for Trayvon, but I thought he's done a really good job with that. And then Isaiah has started to round into the form. In the last few weeks, you've seen him really be impactful, and I know it's against the Jaguars and the Saints. It's not fantastic quarterback play, two teams that are, out of it, looking for the finish line, just like the Raiders. But you go out there and you play, and you put your best film out there, and I thought Isaiah has done just that. Vinny Bonsignore actually asked Antonio Pierce multiple times about Aiden O'Connell, another guy that I've been giving props to. I thought he did a much better job against the Saints on Sunday, being able to go through his progressions and, he felt like he had a much better game than what he has had so far and continues to improve and has made a name for himself in an argument about being in the mix for the starting quarterback for the Raiders in 2025, whether it's for the whole season or just a bridge guy that makes way for a rookie later on. But here's Vinny Bonsignore asking AP about Aiden O'Connell.
Aiden O'Connell has shown you this season, especially these last two games, and is he somebody that you could comfortably move into next season with as the starting quarterback for the Raiders?
Yeah, I think he's been resilient. Obviously, go back to the quarterback competition in the spring, training camp. Thought he handled it like a pro. He was always ready to go. And then when we made a move to start him, I think the Rams week, obviously gave us a good chance there. And then he got injured, came back. I think just with a resilient player. I think it's kind of like what we saw last year. Just the more reps he gets, the more opportunities he gets, he makes the most out of them. And like I said, whenever he protects the football, he puts us all in a better position.
Do you think he solidified himself as a starter here, or do you feel like it's going to kind of follow along the way it did last year, last offseason with the quarterback position?
Yeah, I think Aiden O'Connell will be a starter NFL quarterback.
Thought that was interesting, and me and Vinny actually exchanged a couple text messages after the Zoom meeting, and Vinny asked him a couple questions about Aiden. I thought they were very appropriate questions, and the way that he closed out that last one, I think Aiden will be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't know exactly what that means, where that means. He didn't say necessarily with the Raiders and didn't necessarily say what kind of role he was going to be, but a starting quarterback. And we know that he's been a starting quarterback. Obviously, he did that Antonio Pierce's interim year, and he's done it multiple times this year as well. And I just think it was a big deal. I've said it multiple times. I'll say it again. Big deal that he was able to come back and close out the final 3 games of the season and kind of put his best, footwork and best play out there on film just to give the Raiders and any other team across the league something to think about. I said it on my radio show on Monday, and I'll say it again here. I would not be shocked at all to see Aiden O'Connell as a starting quarterback of the 2025 season for the Raiders. I just would not be surprised at all. And then one final soundbite from Antonio Pierce's press conference from Monday. Vic Tafur from The Athletic asked AP about other young dudes that have stepped up. Obviously, Isaiah Palamao is one of those guys, but Antonio Pierce goes through a few different guys that he's seen step up and play some significant roles this season for the Silver and Black.
Hey, Antonio, yesterday you mentioned how the young guys are playing hard for you. Have you also seen improvement? And then some guys come to mind as far as guys who made strides this year?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, all these guys constantly playing. 20-plus guys played again yesterday. And the one I'll talk about, and it went back to training camp, DJ Glaze. When you don't talk about offensive linemen, you don't mention his name. I know he had some penalties early on, but each and every week, just accountable. You don't see pressure coming from his side. Does a good job in the run game. You get better there, understanding that. But for a guy who I didn't expect to start as much as he started and play the way he's played consistently, it goes back to training camp, and I've been speaking highly of him. Isaiah Palamao will be another one, for example. Jonah and Zach Carter inside. I thought those 2 D tackles, over the last 6 weeks have constantly improved. And we've seen them constantly make plays and put themselves in position to earn more reps. And then obviously you can't speak enough about Trey Tucker as well. I thought outstanding job yesterday. Some good opportunities there for him. Big time catch down in the end zone. Just improvement. Then we put him back to his returner, and I think he had a 10-plus there return.
Got to shout out to DJ Glaze, right? He's a guy that we didn't know what he was going to be. I know when the Raiders drafted him, I thought he was going to be a swing tackle. He had mentioned he didn't mind any kind of role that he would have, and then all of a sudden thrust into action when Thayer Munford went down early in training camp. And really, he hasn't flinched, and he's shown what he can do. He's continued to improve as far as I'm concerned. Him and JPJ are some nice pieces along that Raiders offensive line. I know that, the end is getting near for Colton Miller, whether it's a couple more seasons seasons or one more season or whatever the case may be. But that offensive line is going to have to be retooled. But those two guys, Jackson Powers-Johnson, who, my opinion, will be, the future center sooner rather than later, and DJ Glaze, could be the guy at the right tackle spot moving forward. But those are a couple of good pieces that Tom Telesco hit on in the second and the third round. So that was what really stood out to me from Antonio's presser that he had on Monday. I also wanted to pass along this nugget on Jack Jones. I talked about him on Monday's show. I was happy that he had a good game. Happy to see him get that interception. I wish he had jumped up and actually tried to take it to the house as he could have. And even Lincoln Kennedy on the broadcast just kind of chuckled because he knew that, he had an opportunity to do something with it, and he didn't do it. He just stepped out of bounds and started celebrating. But Jack Jones had 3 passes defense in the game on Sunday, a single game career high. He's up to a career high 15 passes defense in 2024, tied for the 4th most in the NFL. So I mentioned that Jack Jones hadn't had a fantastic season. We've seen him get burned multiple times, especially on the double moves. He likes to gamble. That's just who he is. He tries to make plays. But tied for 4th most in the NFL is nothing to shake a stick at as far as pass breakups go. And also, the 15 passes defense are tied for the 9th most in a single season in Raiders history since 1999, and the most since 2018. What Gareon Conley did it 15 times, which is pretty wild because as you know, anyone who's listened to this show for a while, I was not a Gareon Conley guy. Didn't like it when the Raiders drafted him in the first round. Didn't think that he, really brought it too much while he was on the team. I know he had a couple moments where he stepped up, but yeah, pretty a surprise to find out in 2018 that Gareon Conley had 15 passes defense. But there you go. So Jack Jones, again, I think that he would be the first to tell you he should have had a bigger and better season, but at least he is making some plays and showing what he can do. It needs to be tighter. It needs to be better, but he is showing a little something. I thought that was an interesting little nugget to pass along about Jack Jones. And the final thing I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, this comes from former Raiders tight end Foster Moreau. Actually, Foster Moreau, but for the longest we called him Foster Moreau, but I definitely want to say his name correctly, and he has let us know that it was Foster Moreau, even though I know the folks in New Orleans still call him Moreau. But either way, he was talking after the game, and this is courtesy of NOF, New Orleans Football, and actually I saw it because AFL Godfather retweeted it, and I thought it was some interesting stuff. A lot of fans upset about the way that the Raiders are playing, the fact that they're on a 2-game winning streak, and it's ruining their draft position, as many people say. Like I say, I never root for losses. I understand the end game, and I understand why you would root for a loss. I know that the draft pick is important for, the growth of this team and what they need to do moving forward. But I thought Foster really summed it up perfectly when he met with the media following the game on Sunday versus the Raiders. And again, he's a well-respected former Raider tight end. I got a ton of respect for him. He's a guy that, beat Hodgkin's lymphoma, found that out after he left the Raiders as a free agent, and thank goodness that he did, or else he wouldn't have found that out. So, Foster is obviously he's a testament to hard work and everything. He's overcome adversity, and this is what he had to say about playing hard and trying to win games and why they do that.
Going into last week's game, we're not playing for a playoff berth, right? I mean, there's plenty of the fan base that wants us to lose so we can get a better draft pick. Like, I'm not blind to that. Like, I see that, and they could think that all they want, but people have to play with passion, they have to play with pride, and they have to play for each other, and they have to play for their jobs. Like, you have to play because this is your resume. And I hate talking about resumes. The man that's talking about their resume is out of a damn job. Like, that's a fact. So, like, you could think about your resume all you want, but in reality, you got to play for pride, and you got to play for not only the name on the back, but the name on the front and the logo on the side of your damn helmet. That's a fact. And I'd love to see us get back to doing that. And look, you could, work smart, not hard, is not something I believe in. You have to work your balls off. You have to work as hard as you possibly can just to have a chance in this league. Just to have a chance in life, you got to work tirelessly, right? That's what I believe. And if you work hard enough, eventually you'll get smart. But I don't believe in all the rest of the hoopla. I just work hard, be where your feet are, and just the secret's in the dirt. The secret's in the daily grind. Thanks, guys.
That was courtesy of New Orleans Football, Foster Moreau. Good stuff. Really good stuff. I think that was really telling what he said and the way that he said it and worded it. And again, I know that, for the fans that don't want to hear it, don't give a rip about these players going out there. It's about what they're putting on film. They have to do this. This is their job performance, right? They are evaluated and judged by what they're doing. And if they're out there dogging it and not trying to win games, guess what? The Raiders or any other team, the Saints, any other team in the league is going to say, yeah, but in week 17, even though they were eliminated, that dude wasn't out there trying. He was dogging it. That's not the kind of player that we want in our organization. And that's how the NFL, which stands for not for long, that's how you get to the end of your NFL career. Football players just aren't wired like that. It's one thing in basketball when you got 82 games, you got 17 of these bad boys. That's all you're guaranteed. So you've got to go out there and put your best foot forward. Now, the one thing that front offices can do if they don't want, the team to win games, they can pull Aiden O'Connell. They can pull Brock Bowers. They can pull Jacoby Myers. They can pull Amir Abdullah. They can pull, Isaiah Palomau. They can pull a lot of different guys and have dudes at the very back end, practice squad dudes and, guys at the very back end of the roster playing and not giving them an opportunity to win. That's not what this Raiders team is doing, and you're really not seeing that too much around the league. I know the Jets took a fat L on Sunday and looked really checked out, but for the most part, I guarantee you with the Raiders, they have not quit at all, and it goes back to what you just heard from Foster, former Raiders tight end. Coming up in segment number 2, I know a lot of conversation is about the draft. It's going to be about the draft. The end of the season comes up in 1 week, so we'll be into the offseason, and there's a lot of change that I guarantee is going to happen. Where is it going to come from? We'll find out sooner rather than later, but we'll talk about the draft coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of our great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, and that is Rocket Money. Rocket Money can help you find subscriptions that you forgot about that you may be paying for twice. That's happened to a lot of people. They find their subscriptions, didn't realize they were paying for it, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. So what exactly is Rocket Money? Well, it's a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place. It's where subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year come together. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members usually up to about $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. You imagine what you could do with the extra $740? Just saying. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions right now. Reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to give you a little bit of news and notes, little nuggets on the upcoming 2025 NFL draft and where the Silver and Black sit after 17 weeks and, back-to-back victories in week 16 and week 17. So this is according to Field Yates from ESPN. He does a fantastic job in lockstep with the NFL. So a couple little notes. The Patriots will pick first overall if they lose in week 18. It's just that simple. The Patriots are the only team that is locked into a top 5 pick no matter what happens in week 18. So just remember that because they have their quarterback. Also, 4 teams still have a shot at picking number 1 overall. Obviously, the Patriots, the Browns, the Tennessee Titans, and the New York Football Giants, who just picked up a victory on Sunday over the Indianapolis Colts and ruined and finished their season. So this is from Bill Barnwell, and I wanted to make sure to pass this along because I thought this was interesting. Those first nuggets from Field Yates, interesting to know, right? The Patriots will pick number 1 overall if they lose in week 18. So if the Raiders or any other team are interested in trading, that's who they'd be trading with as of, week 18. If they do lose, they'll be trading with the New England Patriots. And again, they have their quarterback. So if you're hell-bent on Cam Ward, you're hell-bent on Shedeur Sanders, and you want that number 1 overall pick, that's a team you're talking to. So just looking at this chart, again, Bill Barnwell from ESPN does a fantastic job. The Patriots, 79.3% chance of getting that number 1 overall pick and 100% chance they'll end up with a top 5 pick. So if you're New England, if you're Gerard Mayo and company, you pretty much know what your range is, 1st to 5th, depending on what happens in week 18. The New York Giants, they're at the number 2 spot. Their projection, 5.7% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick just after picking up that victory on Sunday versus the Colts. A top 5 pick, 89.5% chance. So again, if you're the Giants, you feel pretty good that you're going to get a top 5 pick. Clearly, they need a quarterback. The number 3 team, the Tennessee Titans, they have a 10.4% chance of getting that number 1 overall pick. We all know they need a quarterback. Will Levis ain't it, right? Top 5 pick, 83% chance that they can get a top 5 pick. So again, that range, Patriots number 1, Giants number 2, Titans at number 3 currently is the projected 2025 NFL draft order. Sliding in at number 4, the Cleveland Browns. 4.6% chance that they end up with the number 1 overall pick and a 68.5% chance that they end up with the top 5 spot. So there you go. Patriots, Giants, Titans, Browns. That's how the top 4 go. Number 5, the Jacksonville Jaguars. 0% chance they get the number 1 pick. 0. 62.9% chance that they end up top 5. Jacksonville has picked up a victory in back-to-back weeks. So they're picking currently at number 5. The Carolina Panthers. Oh, the Jaguars, by the way, don't need a quarterback. They've got Trevor Lawrence. So that's just kind of eliminates that if you're, you're thinking about that. Carolina Panthers at number 6. I'm not sure if they need a quarterback or not. Bryce Young's been playing a lot better. I feel like that they're going to move forward with Bryce. And if not, maybe they'll put him on the trade block. That's just something to think about as well. But they're at the 6 hole. They have a 0.0% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick and a 52% chance of getting a top 5 pick. So whatever they want to do to add to their team, maybe it's go out and get the top offensive lineman. Maybe it's an interest in Travis Hunter. Maybe it's an interest in other, right? Whoever that is, you feel like the Carolina Panthers are going to have an opportunity to be a top 5 pick, at least a 52% chance. Then there's the New York Football Jets, which is very interesting for multiple reasons. Remember, the Raiders own their 3rd-round pick because of the Devontae Adams trade. So the higher that they pick, the better for the Raiders pick in round 3 of the 2025 draft. The Raiders will have not only their pick from round 3, but they'll also have the Jets. So the higher the Jets pick, the better. They have 0% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick, but they do have a 37.1% chance of getting a top 5 pick, and nobody believes that they're going to win in Week 18. Matter of fact, I don't even know who's going to play for them in Week 18. I mean, Aaron Rodgers asked to sit down after getting down 33-0 to the Buffalo Bills on this past Sunday, which, what does he have to prove? 33-0. It turned into 40-0. There was no reason for him to be out there. Only the worst that can happen is he gets injured, right? There's no reason for that. I mean, they weren't coming back, so there was really no reason for him. And, as Sauce Gardner said following the game, he felt like those dudes were pretty much checked out based off what's been going on this season. So they got a big mess going on. But, the more the Jets lose, the better, because that's going to help the Raiders with their other 3rd-round pick. Then there's, at the number 8 spot, the Raiders. The Raiders, after back-to-back wins, have a 0% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick. They do have a 4.6 chance of getting a top 5 pick. So clearly it doesn't look like they're going to be picking in the top 5. So just prepare for that regardless what happens this week against the Chargers. And, they could beat the Chargers at home to close out the season. They could take the L. But there's a 37.1% chance, 4.6% chance. I was looking at the Jets thing. They have a 4.6% chance of getting a top 5 pick. So most likely they're not going to do that. They'll be on the outside looking in. Currently, they're at the number 8 spot. The worst they can do if they do beat the Chargers is end up at the number 10 spot. So do with that with what you may, right? I mean, number 10 is not great, right? I mean, they were at number 13 last year, and you know how that conversation went. And there's a lot less, quarterbacks that are going to be worthy of, top picks in this upcoming draft. And you know what? Tom Telesco might not be interested in any of the quarterbacks, right? I've thrown out my idea that I think that Shador would be really good. I think Cam Ward's a really good player as well. But Tom Telesco might not have any interest. The one thing I know that they haven't done is they haven't pulled players, like I mentioned earlier, pulling players and having backups play. They haven't done that. So nobody has shown any signs of, we have no interest in winning games. But a 0% chance at the number 1 pick and only a 4.6% chance at a top 5 pick. Then the Bears at number 9, 0.0 chance for top pick and 2.4% when it comes to top 5. And then the Saints, who the Raiders just beat, 0 chance and 0 chance at a top 5. They're at number 10. They're not going to be number 1, and they're not going to be top 5 either. So the Raiders are sitting there in, an interesting spot. All right. It's not going to be a pick that anyone's super fired up and excited about, just because you're going to have to do some gymnastics. If Tom Telesco wants to get up there and wants to go get one of those top quarterbacks, either Shador or Cam Ward, he's going to have to do something. Right. And he very well might end up having to trade with the Patriots, right, all the way up to the number 1 spot, because, again, the Titans need a quarterback. The Browns need a quarterback. The Panthers don't need a quarterback. The Jets might need a quarterback based off what they're doing. Who knows? Maybe they'll be interested in bringing, someone in and making a trade up. So there's a few teams that are in front of the Raiders that are going to be looking at quarterbacks. Obviously, the Giants sitting there at the number 2 spot, who actually picked up a win on Sunday. So Week 18 will be interesting. Everything that I just rattled off to you will change a little bit, but then we'll know, right? By the time Monday's show rolls around, we'll know what it's going to look like. We'll know exactly where the Raiders are at. We'll know where the other teams are at. We'll know, if coaches are still around, if they're not still around. I mean, there's a lot of information we'll know by, the time Week 18 gets officially wrapped up. And, of course, for the Silver and Black, it gets officially wrapped up on Sunday versus the Chargers. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the National Football League that can be impactful. One more little quick nugget that I wanted to pass along here in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Then we'll get to your calls and texts. This is an interesting note from Ian Rappaport, Rap Sheet from NFL Network, talking about Mike Vrabel. And his name is going to be hot and heavy. We're going to hear his name not only associated with the Raiders job if it becomes available, and it's already being associated with the Raiders job because of Tom Brady, but it's going to be associated with every single job that becomes available. There's already 3 that are available right now: the Jets, the Saints, and the Bears. It's already being associated with those. It's being associated with Ohio State. If Ryan Day doesn't do well in the playoffs and he ends up getting fired, they're talking about him going there, but I think he's going to be an NFL coach. But his consulting job with the Browns expired on Monday. That means he's free to interview with any team with an opening and that's open right now. So he can interview with the Saints. He can interview with the Jets. He can interview with the Browns, or not the Browns, but the Bears if he so chooses so. If they want to bring him in, he can start doing that as of right now. And like I said, he's going to be a name that's going to be associated with every single coaching job that may become available. And that'll be the Raiders as well if, in fact, they do decide to move on from Antonio Pierce. But that's what I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. A little update on the draft, and also wanted to drop a little nugget about Mike Vrabel and what he's going to be looking at from right now moving forward through the coaching cycle in the offseason. But what's on your mind? Your calls and texts are next, 707-654-4693. We'll close out the show hearing from you. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. We got a ton to get to. I won't be able to get to them all, but we'll definitely squeeze them in the next two days. We'll get as much in as possible. So let's go ahead and start things off. We got a text from Raider Rollins. He says, Q, good evening, my good brother. After another Raider win, I feel like next week will be AP's last game. Read an article about how Patrick Graham turned down a contract extension to stay with us. Also, as you know, Bill wants Scott Turner down there at North Carolina. I don't see how they don't just wipe the slate clean and start over. Plus, no DC or OC would want to sign a one-year deal. Only one more week until it gets real interesting for our Las Vegas Raiders. Shout out to Brock Bowers for breaking the record as well. Go Raiders. That's Raider Rollins, and thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to unpack there, right? Patrick Graham did turn down a contract extension, and I personally think that that's him leaving his options open, right? I mean, he could say, look, if the defense is going to play at the level that I think it's going to play at, I'm going to be a hot commodity for a head coach. Or, he might decide that, maybe he wants to go somewhere else and do something else and not have to get permission from the Raiders, right? If they have his rights, if he's under contract, they would have to give him permission for anything except for a head coaching job. So it could be a situation where he wanted to bet on himself. It could be a situation where he feels like Antonio Pierce was going to be a one-and-done guy. I mean, I don't know exactly what the answer to that is. I'll say this. If Patrick Graham is gone, and just say Antonio Pierce sticks around, I would be so intrigued and so happy to see Robbie Leonard get an opportunity to be a defensive coordinator. I just, again, it's just a gut feeling, but I think Robbie Leonard is a guy that not enough people are talking about. The job that he's done with that Raiders defensive line, he has made anyone that he's coaching up play at a very high level. Tyree Wilson is playing a lot better. K'Lavon Chason is playing really well. Max Crosby sings his praises. Christian Wilkins was playing, I thought, pretty good until he got injured. Adam Butler and John Jenkins have done some really good stuff. Jonah Laulu, he's playing well. I mean, there's dudes that are stepping up. Andre Carter, too, had a half a sack. He's just joined the team, right? I mean, so I feel like that's a guy, Robbie Leonard, that you should be thinking about, because he might be a guy that, if Antonio Pierce does stick around, that may end up being the defensive coordinator if Patrick Graham decides to take his party and go somewhere else. Something to pay attention to. But you very well could be right? I mean, again, like you said, in about 1 week, it's going to get real interesting. That's for sure. Up next, got a call from Cyrus. He's calling to give his thoughts on the future of this team moving forward, going into next season. Here's Cyrus.
Yes, hello, Q. My name is Cyrus. I've been a Raider fan since 70s. I just wanted to at least mention my take on the future of this team next year. I honestly think that if they draft well, and it's a huge if, but if they continue building, from the front lines, defense, offense, get a good running back and protect the quarterback and allow him to basically have some time and with the right system, with the offensive head coach that can basically teach him and allow him to grow into that system and understand the system. Because, in my opinion, he is a smart football mind, but obviously he's not experienced. And just be able to build something and see how it works out, because I think it would be a mistake to give a lot of draft picks to move up 2, 3, and if this guy doesn't work out, essentially that's going to be a 3, 4, 5 year downfall of the team again. But I just think they need to be smart, not desperate, not give into the pressure, and be able to hopefully build a foundation with the right system and the right offensive mind, be able to do something that they haven't done essentially since early 2000. Goodbye.
Cyrus, Billy Ray. No, I'm just kidding. I guarantee everyone has probably said that. If you had $1 for every time someone called you Billy Ray, you'd probably be rich. It's better being called Billy Ray than it's being called Miley. So there's that. But no, seriously, thanks for the call. I appreciate you. And yeah, there's some really good young pieces, right? They clearly need more, but there's some good ones, right? I would say they need offensive lineman, a running back, a linebacker, wide receiver, right? Not necessarily in that order, but I think that those are some areas that definitely need to be addressed. Tom Telesco very well could do the same thing he did in 2024, draft the BPA, the best player available, right? And the best player available ended up being Brock Bowers, and he was fantastic, right? I don't think any of us realized that he was going to have the season that he's had. Tom Telesco has been famous for just drafting the best player available, letting the board fall to him, and he very well might do that. Again, I talked about in segment number 2, the Raiders are at the 8th spot right now, and the worst they could be is number 10 based off what happens this upcoming week. So Tom Telesco might be in that same position. He might not be interested in trading up. He hasn't traded back. He hasn't traded up. So he might not be interested in any of that and just continuing to build the team. He might not look at this quarterback class as something that he wants to deep dive into. Right. And so it's going to be a lot of questions that are going to be asked. Obviously, the first one is going to be, is Antonio Pierce coming back? Once that is answered, we'll kind of have an idea how this team moves forward. But if they do move on from AP, I can see an offensive minded coach getting hired. Right. And I know that most people have Ben Johnson at the top of their wish list, and it's hard not to when you see what he was doing and he's been doing with Detroit and what he, was doing on Monday Night Football against the 49ers and the trick plays that he rolled out against the Bears. I mean, he's a sharp mind. I think he's going to be very picky with the job that he takes when he does decide to take that head coaching job, because as you know, you might only get one chance, one crack at it, and you want to make sure that you get the right one. So thanks, Cyrus, for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Raider Nick out to 808. So what's up, Q? Raider Nick out to 808. Love pretty much everything you do Raider-wise, so shout out. Raider Nation, let's just relax and let things fall as they may. If we have to wait till next season to draft a quarterback, it isn't the end of the world, and none of these guys are considered generational quarterbacks. So if we if we just build up this team, let it get healthy, and just give Aiden a true shot next season, then maybe draft someone like Cade Klubnik, my number 1 quarterback, or Drew Aller. At least I think that would bode the best for the future as well. Please let me know what you think, Q. Raiders. That's from Raider Nick out to 808. Thanks for the shout out. I do appreciate you. And they very well could do that. They very well could wait until next season, right? There's 2 dudes that should be first-round picks, and then there's a bunch of other guys that should be second-round picks, but somebody might work their way into the first round at the combine, at the pro days. We see it every year. Jalen Milroe, I've been asked a million times about Milroe because I am an Alabama fan. Milroe needs to go back to school, in my opinion. He really does, right? I mean, it's just he needs another year with Kalen DeBoer, and hopefully Kalen DeBoer could do with him what he did with Michael Penix, taking him from a guy who was injury-prone in Indiana to turn him into a top 10 pick. right? Kalen DeBoer is really good at that, but I think that Jalen Milroe needs more than 1 year under Kalen DeBoer. Now, that doesn't mean that he's going to go back to school. My suggestion, I've had a lot of people ask me about Alabama football and what I think about Milroe. Great athlete, but at this stage of the game, he'd be a hell of a project, and I don't think the Raiders should take that task on. I just don't. We'll see what happens, but Aiden O'Connell very well, as I mentioned on my radio show, I mentioned earlier on this podcast, I think there's a great chance I'd actually be shocked if he's not the starting quarterback for the Raiders in 2025. That's just my gut feeling. Up next, got a call from Jake from Massachusetts. He's calling to talk about the last couple of games, the play of Aiden O'Connell, and what he feels will happen if the Raiders go best player available and keep this same quarterback. Here's Jake. Thanks for the call.
Hey, Kia. Once again, it's Jake from Mass. I know that Debbie Downing calling lately about just negative stuff, but I mean, just kind of reacting to what people are saying, and some of it is just, to me, kind of outlandish, and I don't know. For example, somebody talking about Aiden O'Connell is the guy going forward. Have we not been here before, man? Like, I don't understand. We're giving praise to the last two teams we just played that are literally garbage teams, third stringers. Like, come on. This man barely sneaked out a win last week. I just don't know. Regardless, I don't think AOC is the answer. If we draft the best player available and go with AOC, we're going to be in the same situation next year as we are this year. Which, I mean, at this point, I'm not really surprised anymore about it because, it's been a pretty fun 20 plus years of this nonsense. So it is what it is. Trying to be positive, but it's hard to tell because year after year. But yeah, that people saying, hey, at least we're getting the last 2 wins. Start the season, end the season right, so it keeps us up top in the next season. What happened last year and what happened this year? We won a couple of games last year towards the end. Oh, AP's the man. This year, a dumpster fire. So, whoever's saying that also, come on, let's. I feel like people are not realistic. They're in their own little world, and which I wish I could be too, but it's just too much, man. Year after year after year after year, same nonsense. So, yeah, more pessimistic calling, more negative calling, talking junk about the Raiders, but that's where we're at now. AP's probably gonna be gone, which it is too bad, but it is what it is. But, yeah, keep it pushing. Hopefully we lose this next game, but with my luck, we're going to win and be all the way to pick 13 and get Jack for this play. But, all right, peace out.
Jake, good stuff. Appreciate you as always. It's all right to be Debbie Downer. That's okay, right? You don't have to have a positive rainbow and puppy dog call. It's all good, right? I mean, hey, I love to take all the calls, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. It's all good. I do appreciate it. And I don't think anyone's praising the team for winning. Obviously it's clearly too late. They're not going to, get into postseason action. I give them credit for not just rolling over. I give them credit for not quitting. I give the young players, credit for stepping up and saying, hey, here I am. I deserve to be on this team, like K'Lavon Chason. I give him credit for taking advantage of the second opportunity he's had, after being released by the Jaguars. I give Isaiah Palamau, a guy who was an undrafted free agent, props for going from the practice squad to being a super backup to all of a sudden being a starter and making an impact, right? I give a guy like DeCam Richardson, a 4th-round pick out of Mississippi State who started the season with a hamstring injury. I give him a lot of props for working his tail off, and even though it hasn't been pretty all the time, he's learning. He's getting better. He's getting valuable reps. I give Tyree Wilson a lot of credit, who, in my opinion, he's getting better, and he's still working with raw talent. He's not really working with any big technique. He's just working with his raw talent, but you see him making impactful plays. I give Amir Abdullah, a 10-year vet. I give him props for not just, calling it a day and saying, 1, 2, 3 Cancun. This dude's a 10-year vet, just got his first 100-yard game. That's what I give him credit for. I give AP credit for still having these guys, motivated to play. I think that bodes well for AP. I'm not saying that means he's going to be, kept around. He's going to be, returned for the next year of his contract and be coaching the Raiders in 2025. I'm not saying that, but I'll tell you what, if they had quit, if they had caved in, if they had just, been a rollover, and just showed up and did nothing, like a lot of fans want him to do, I guarantee you AP wouldn't be back next year, right? He might not even have made it to the end of this year. He never lost the locker room. That's the one thing I can say. A coach needs to be fired when he loses the locker room. Antonio Pierce never lost the locker room. Again, what does that mean long term? I don't know. Right? We'll find out sooner rather than later. I don't know. But I do give him credit, and I give the team credit for all sticking together and still trying to make it work. So, there's teams around the league that don't look like that and aren't competing like that. And I go back to the New York Jets. They're definitely one of them. And hell, we saw the Chargers quit on their coach last year, right? We saw it firsthand. Literally, the Raiders got Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley fired, right? In Allegiant Stadium on Thursday Night Football when they put up 63 points. That team literally quit in the game on their coach. They just threw in their hand. Simple. We have not seen the Raiders do that at all. I will give them credit for that. Not praising them, but I will give them credit for that. But thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And like I said, it's okay to, be, negative and down. It's fine. You've earned that right. You're a Raider fan, right? That's why I say whatever your opinion is fine. I'm good with that. We can always have different opinions and still be respectful to each other. We'll close out with a text from C Major in the 702. He says, hey, Q. C Major in the 702. I want to get your thoughts on the AP Dan Campbell comparison. While the records as first-year head coaches are similar, Campbell went 3-13-1, AP going either 4-13 or 5-12. I don't think AP can get the same results without a lot of new and quality talent. Following their 3-11-1 season, Campbell got Aiden Hutchinson at number 2 overall, traded their franchise quarterback Matt Stafford, which ultimately got him Jared Goff, wide receiver Jameson Williams, running back Jahmyr Gibbs, tight end Sam Laporta, defensive line Josh Paschal, defensive tackle Broderick Martin, and DB Melvin Fonwu. Even if Telesco continues to draft quality players like Bowers and JPJ, that haul for Stafford put them in a great place that shows where they are today. If we want to replicate the Lions' path, we'd have to trade someone like Crosby for a king's ransom and still land a franchise quarterback somehow. Anyways, just wanted to see your thoughts on the comparison. Love the show. Raiders. That's from C Major in the 702. And yeah, and I know the Campbell and AP comparisons are not apples to apples, right? I get it. It's two different scenarios. Campbell did have coaching experience as an interim in Miami, also had more experience on the New Orleans Saints coaching staff before he actually got that opportunity. But results are the results, and it was bad his first year in Detroit. And they easily could have said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. 3-13-1 is not screaming a successful first year. Right? So they could have easily just pulled the plug and said, yeah, this ain't going to work. All that rah-rah stuff that you were talking ain't going to work. He also replaced his offensive coordinator, right? His first offensive coordinator wasn't working out. Ben Johnson comes in. Ben Johnson's fantastic. He's going to be a head coach whenever he so chooses to, right? And the Raiders do have to, get some more quality talent. They do have talent on the roster. It's not like they're not a talented team. It's not something that necessarily has to be built overnight into a Super Bowl contender. Right? I mean, you can get your quarterback right now. Maybe you get the players first and then your quarterback maybe next year, right? There's different ways to get it done. I just think that the fact that the Lions chose to stick with Campbell and say, you know what, the first year was not good at all. We expect more. We want more. His franchise has been down too long. The fact that they stuck with him and trusted that he was going to get things turned around is really where the comparison is for me. And the Raiders could choose to do that with AP, or they could choose to go in another direction, right? That's going to be up to them, the powers that be. Mark Davis, Tom Brady. I know Richard Seymour is part of that, right? And whoever else is part of the ultimate decision-making. Evaluation season is going on right now, and at the end of the season, as Mark Davis said at the owners' meetings in Dallas, he'll evaluate everything after the season gets wrapped up. Well, guess what, Jack? The season's almost wrapped up. It gets wrapped up coming up on Sunday versus the Chargers. So we'll have more answers to the questions that we obviously want to know the answers to sooner rather than later. So thanks so much, C Major, for that text. I do appreciate you. Got a call from Raider Eddie in Denver. We'll get to that on tomorrow's show. A text from Raider Dominator. We'll get that as well. And as we talk about the draft, I had a really good conversation on ESPN Radio on Monday. I was filling in. We did Greeny and Carlin versus Joe at the same time, a little 4-hour chunk. And Matt Miller, NFL Draft Scout on Twitter, he's been covering the draft for a very long time. We had a really good conversation. I got some really good sound bites that I want to bring to the table, talking about the upcoming draft, talking about what it might cost a team like the Raiders interested in trading up, talk about the different quarterbacks that are in play. Some really good stuff, some great sound bites that I wanted to bring to the table. And it'll kind of go along with the call from Raider Eddie in Denver as well, and some more stuff. So we got plenty to get to, unpack. We'll have a fantastic New Year's Eve. Hopefully everyone's going to be safe out there and do what they do. But we'll have a show for you here on New Year's as well because, we're going to keep on trucking through each and every day. We got our final crossover edition Thanksgiving coming up on Thursday, and we'll finish off the week really strong on Friday, send you into the final week of the regular season, which is wild to say, but here we are. So Raider Nation, buckle up. If you don't check back in the rest of the year, I hope you have a safe and happy New Year's Eve, and hopefully a safe and prosperous New Year whenever you do check back in. And of course, we'll be here, and we'll be here waiting for you. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.